Welcome everyone to episode 7 of season 3 of the Khalis podcast, a platform to share the work and thoughts of both aspiring and established writers, poets and artists who are passionate about preserving and furthering Sikh and Punjabi heritage and identity. Today I am joined by a guest who needs little introduction. Inni Kaur currently serves as the creative director at the Sikh Research Institute, but has embodied a rich array of roles in the organisation since 2010, including having served as the chair of the board and more recently as the CEO. Inni Kaur is a passionate author, poet and artist. Her literary contributions include her children's book series Journey with the Gurus, which we'll touch upon shortly, and her other published works include Sakhi Time with Nani Ji, Thank You Waheguru, Daddy's Turban, The Story of Us, and The Fragrance of Bhai Singh. So Inni Kaur welcome to the Khalis podcast. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you so much for having me here, Ranbir. It's wonderful to be able to have a conversation with you about something which both you and I are passionate about, books.
Absolutely, yeah. Really looking forward to it. Thank you for taking the time to join me. So I thought we'd start with just a little bit of background into yourself and how you came into this line of writing. Where did that journey begin for you?
So I was never a writer. I had never thought of myself as a writer, and I haven't written anything until Shabad Guru entered my life. I was an avid reader, but never a writer. But something switched within me when the grace was when I felt the grace. You know, grace is always present, but it's when you feel the grace. And it is when the Shabad Guru entered my life that the outpourings began. They began first in poetry, and then I moved on to prose because then I wanted to write more, or it just led to that type of writing.
Right.
So I always attribute my writing, the journey into this writing is a gift from the Guru.
Okay. Amazing. And when did you start writing in terms of time frame? What year would it have been?
It was probably in my mid-40s.
Okay. Right.
In my mid-40s. Early 40s began with the poetry, and then the books flowed in mid-40s.
Okay. And we're going to touch upon obviously Journey with the Gurus shortly, but is that something you always had in mind once you realized that writing was something that you felt passionate about and you enjoyed doing? Did you at that stage, did you think that actually you would publish children's books, or was it just poetry and prose that you were focused on at that point?
So I wrote poetry for myself. It wasn't for a commercial or anything of that sort. It was really the outpouring.
Yeah.
And you ask about children's books. No, it was actually at a dinner celebration of my husband's birthday. And I had the girls, I have 2 daughters, and they were in their 20s, and we were having dinner at a restaurant.
Okay.
And the girls started to tease their father. They said, little rabbits are blue and little rabbits are pink. And they started reciting and recalling all the stories he had shared with them at bedtime, because he would read to them before going to bed.
Right.
And at that instant, the thought within me was, oh my gosh, what a mistake I have made. If the girls were reading the Sakhis, they would have memorized them. It would have been embedded in their memory, because what you read to the children at night gets embedded in your consciousness. There's no way it gets out. But I also recognize that there were no, if I can say, books of great quality printing and caliber when my girls were young, right? The books were coming out of India, those if I can be a little unkind, the paper is not good. The quality of ink and the writing, the English was not of the caliber, because here
Right.
I am giving my children, my girls, the Disney books and
Yeah.
Angelina the ballerina, and you
Right.
can't give them that and have books which are so precious
Yeah.
at a different subpar. So I didn't do that. I would. And then the voice within me said, well, you need to write. And I said,
Right.
I've never written anything
Yeah. Yeah.
that, but you will write. And
Hmm.
when the voice within you speaks,
Yeah.
you have no choice but to listen.
Sure.
And that's how the journey began.
Okay. 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 Amazing. And I've heard you previously speak about the inspiration that Bhai Singh's writings has had on you, and obviously, Journey with the Gurus is based primarily from his work. So, at what stage did you then make that connection? And also, did you rely on any other sources that are, in terms of for the stories that I've included in this series? For example, the Janam Sakya. Um, how did all of that come about?
So I didn't know, I didn't grow up speaking Punjabi. I didn't
Okay.
know, because I was born outside India. I was born in Kuwait. I went to a
Right.
convent boarding school. My upbringing, if I can call it that, is very Christian,
Right.
because
Okay.
9 months out of the year, you send a 6-year-old to a boarding school where you
Right.
cannot speak anything but English, and you go to church every day, and you go to mass every Sunday, and you have these beautiful, huge, gorgeous, illustrated German books on the biblical stories.
Right.
So your memories and everything are of that. So when Professor Puran Singh actually was the man that came into my life, my aunt gave me a book and she says, I don't understand this book, but I think you will. And when I began reading Professor Puran Singh's poetry, it was like mind blowing. This man is a Sikh and he
Mhm.
can write with such sensitivity. I
Right.
mean, I just began following Professor Puran Singh. I mean, he
Okay.
became my mentor.
Right. Right. Okay.
And then as I got to know Professor Puran Singh, his mentor was Bhai Singh.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm saying, and he wrote so eloquently about him. And I'm saying, my mentor writes so eloquently about his. So I want to know now his mentor,
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, it's just a journey. You can
Yeah.
relate to that. But I picked up the translations of Bhai Singh's book, Sundari and
Okay.
everything. And they didn't do a thing. In fact, I said, this is not for me.
Okay. Okay.
But the voice inside was strong enough, and I started to learn Gurmukhi.
Right.
So I learned Gurmukhi. From the Keda, I went straight to Guru Nanak Chamatkar.
Okay.
And do you know how tough that was, Ranbir? I
Right.
have the dictionary, I have my Keda, I have Guru Nanak Chamatkar, and I have a legal pad. And
Right.
every line I am writing to the best of my ability. So
Right.
uh, so I did that because I wanted to know Bhai Vir Singh.
Okay.
And he made me fall in love with Guru Nanak Sahib because I didn't know Pacha.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because keeping in mind, my background is very biblical. I know
Right.
all the biblical stories, but I don't know. But the way he wrote Guru Nanak Chamatkar and the way it was unfolding, I had done that, if I can call that work, but it wasn't work. It was just for myself getting to
Sure.
know. So
Sure.
when the voice said this, I knew I would go straight there because that's my source of it. So I've really pretty much followed the Guru Nanak Chamatkar. I've looked at, to get the references or historic thing, I looked at the encyclopedia, Sikh encyclopedia for the dates and all, but really the dialogue and the thought process is really from Guru Nanak Chamatkar. Because I didn't want to put something which was not, I needed a source because that thought process, that thinking was that. And then the curiosity for the children was like, why does that happen? So I could insert something through Pai Mardana when he needed to get clarification
Right.
or he needed a deeper knowledge of
Sure.
something. So Pai Mardana and I, through this, Pai Mardana is my best friend.
Right.
Because
Okay.
through this journey now, I've, it's like he and I,
Yeah.
we're in this together.
Yeah.
That's how it all unfolded. And but I must tell you, the first time I did the 12 stories, and I thought I was just the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? I thought the stories were beautiful, they were perfect, X, Y, and Z, and this is what authors think. However, I said, let me send it to the kids. So I sent it to a few children in the US, in Canada, and I said, give me your feedback. And you know what they came back with? It makes no sense.
Right. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Was that a humbling experience or what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So at that stage, was it? Sorry to interrupt you. Was it at that stage in the English translation? So had you taken the Gurmukhi, the Punjabi, and then just translated it into English? Is that okay? Right.
I had done that, and what it was is it was very preachy,
Right.
right? They were not walking with it. They couldn't connect with it.
Right.
And the language which I was using was not their right language. So I went back to the drawing board.
Right.
And then from there on, every story that I wrote, every sakhi that I wrote went to the children. And whatever they couldn't understand, I would fix it. And the discussion points at the end of every sakhi, they're discussion points, right? And that actually flowed from the parents because the kids were asking the parents, okay, so what was this and what was that? And the
Sure.
parents didn't know how to answer.
Right.
So
Okay.
they said, you got to tell us how to do this. So in the
Yeah.
discussion points, it flowed from the parents. So this is very much, if I look at it like a community project, I won't say this is, I had a revelation that this is the way it's going to be. No, 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 no. The children were with me, the parents were with me, and that's how it came about.
Okay, that's amazing. I really liked how you kind of explained, when you first came across Bhai Singh's writings, that you kind of you dived into that world by learning Gurmukhi and understanding the stories in the tongue that they were written in, because I think, and obviously then later on when you then had the English translations, it didn't quite make sense with the children. And I think often, like I've got 4 kids, and I find that I can read them a Sakhi in Punjabi and they'll understand and they'll connect. But if I was to try and translate that word for word, because it loses context, and so much work is needed then to add that context in that makes it relatable for children, irrespective of which generation you look at. I mean, because it's a different language, right? So different things are involved. So that's really admirable that you then went back to the drawing board, took on their advice and their feedback, because ultimately this is something that was being done for the first time. So you had to set a certain standard.
It was being done for the first time, and actually, even before the books were printed, or I already saw them on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
And I knew how they needed to look. I knew how inside it needed to look. So it was very uncanny that the way this unfolded, but it was really for the children, right? My children means our children. And when I say my children, all children are mine. They didn't have a Disney book. I mean, my children have shelves of Disney books, right? Beautiful books. There's no sick books. And I said, I want those books. Like the way the girls value these books and they're careful with them, I wanted to create a set that my children would value them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can draw a bit of a parallel there, because a couple of years ago, so the kids obviously watch a lot of animation, especially on YouTube. There's a lot of different cartoons out there now, but up until recently there wasn't anything of a certain standard for Sikhs, as in telling either the stories of the gurus or just generally Sikh stories, and that which did exist was not of that standard. So the kids automatically would gravitate towards the non-Sikh stuff. So I guess it was the same thing with the books, because they weren't of a certain standard and quality, they didn't value it, like you said. So yeah, that's fascinating to hear. So with Journey with the Gurus then, so there are 3 volumes that you've published, and Khalis House is now publishing a new edition. So, yeah, when you started off, because the first one came out in 2010, volume one.
Right.
At that stage, did you envisage there would be 3, 4 volumes, or were you at that point just focused on getting something out?
No, actually, I wanted it to be 10 volumes, one
Oh,
on
wow.
every.
Okay. Okay.
And when I started with the one, I said, no, it's not going to be. It's, because I wanted to take the time.
Yeah.
I wanted to set the stage. And so volume one really was setting the stage.
Right.
Volume two is the journey start, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then I'm on volume four, and volume four it's really now a little deeper. It's about Nam, but
Okay.
in a way which they can understand.
Okay.
But it's
Okay.
also, volume four is a tough one.
Right.
And, you know, and I had, if I can say, I had a breakdown in volume four, because volume four, I am losing my best friend.
Right. Right.
Paimardana is leaving. And
Mhm.
when I got to that chapter, I just froze, broke
Right.
down. I think for 6 months to a year, I could not even go back. And even now, it's hard.
Mhm, mhm.
How can I, I mean, volume four is Baby Nanki leaves us.
Mhm.
And that's hard. That was hard. And I didn't realize how much that Pai Mardana leaving me. And he kept saying, I'm not leaving you. I'm showing you how to see Guru. He was very kind. And he said, look, Guru is standing there, look. And I looked and I couldn't, I was blinded. And he said, you cannot look at Guru that way. You have to start at the feet.
Mhm.
And when my eyes went to the place where Pai Mardana said, look, Guru's, Guru's feet were not touching the ground. They were above. And at that point, I couldn't raise my eyes more than that. It was Matagirya.
Mhm.
And the question I had asked the elements time and time again, I said, Pacha was walking throughout. Were you kind to Pacha? Did the rain fall on him? Did the sun hurt him? Did the wind pierce him? And at that time, I got the answer. He is everything. We serve him. And that was Pai Mardana's gift to me. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Um, so I have begun writing again. I have 2 more chapters to complete in that volume.
Okay.
And
Volume.
I'm hoping to, in 2025, to be able to send you the manuscript.
Okay.
Uh,
Amazing.
but it is, and the kids, when I say, because I do book readings, and the kids are all like, where are we? Where is Guru Nanak Sahib? What's happening and all that.
Right.
And so when I told them that, Baby Nanaki is leaving us, and they were sad. And then I told them, this is the time Pai Mardana is leaving us also. And they were just like stunned. And you know what the children said? You can't end the book that way. You
Right.
have to give us something happy,
Right. Okay. Okay.
right? So even the children are that vested that I cannot leave it that way.
Mhm.
So my volume 4 is I think the last chapter will be of Pailenaji walking in,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a continuation that the kids are now
Yes.
looking forward to something. I can't
Absolutely.
leave it at that. And that's how so intricately tied I am with the children,
Mhm.
you know, and they are aware, and we're going back and forth on this. I feel very blessed that that there is a group of these kids that who are part of this journey.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, just seeing you speak about it there, it clearly has had a profound impact on you as an individual, not just as a writer, but also as a Sikh, right? You know, because you've had the opportunity to revisit the Sakya and this connection that you've formed with Bhai Mardana. You mentioned at the top that he's your best friend. I think that's something quite beautiful, and it's often quite rare that we hear writers or even just widely speaking Sikh teachers and pracharaks speak about that this love that we're supposed to cultivate for the Guru and the Guru's beloved. So I think the fact that you've been able to do that is a sign of the Kirpa in itself, but also, as you've said, that it's had an impact on the children as well, because they're resonating with that, to the point where they're telling you not to leave it at that point and to make it more of a, a happier kind of ending towards that particular volume. So I think that's testament to yourself as well, because you've taken this approach. This wouldn't have happened if you were just vested in trying to get something out there just for the sake of having a book. You've taken your time. I know there was a couple of years, I think, between volume 1 and volume 2, so something you've obviously given it thought, and you've sat with it, and you've allowed it to kind of run its course in essence. And I think that's something in today's day and age, from what I see, because we live in this world of like instant gratification, we need something out now, it had to come out yesterday. I think we sometimes lose that aspect of sahaj that we're supposed to be cultivating as well, and living with. So I think that's it's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Very, very powerful.
I want to say a slight correction. It's not that I cultivated the love.
Mhm. Mhm.
It happened on its own.
Sure.
And you use the word grace.
Thank you.
It took me, once the book was done, I didn't want to put my name on it. I said, this is not mine.
Mhm.
And we went back and forth, and I said, there's no way I'm putting my name. And,
Right.
I said, no, you've got to put your name. And
Yes.
hence I wrote over there, retold. They're not my stories.
Right.
ये मेरियां नहीं हैगियां.
Thank you. Yeah.
These are, which have always been there. All what I'm doing is just retelling them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think, when you have that, I won't say awareness or mindset, then that, whatever you call that gratification, it's not mine. It
Right.
actually belongs to the Panth. It belongs to
Right.
belongs to the children. It belongs to the
Right.
community.
Right.
I'm just doing a little bit of touch up and this and that, but the stories have always been there. The Sakhis have
Absolutely.
always been there
Yeah.
and will be there. Every generation will interpret them in the way they need to connect the next. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what I wrote. I'm just a link in that
Mhm.
chain.
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
doing anything. There is no original thought. There is none, because it's already there.
Sure.
Yeah, that's beautiful. In terms of your other publications, if I can just move towards them. So I mentioned them at the beginning of the episode. If you can maybe share some thoughts on those, and also whether I know we'll come on to it shortly, but in terms of future publications beyond Journey with the Gurus as well. And if I can just tie in another question to this is, you may already have touched upon it, but what you hope to achieve with your creative writing.
I just want to create a set of books, beautiful books, for my children to be able to take to their schools, to their teachers. And, I don't know in the UK how it is, but in the US, the children have the opportunity to pick the book they want to read, right?
Right.
Independent reading, what they call.
Okay.
For me, the highest compliment I got was from a child. They said, you know what? I took Journey with the Gurus to school, and my teacher said I could read it. for independent reading. That's it.
Right.
That's all I want. That the kids are confident enough that they do not have to hide the book when their friends come. It's on their coffee table, it's on their bookshelf, and they can show it to the children, to their friends. I just want that.
Right.
That's one part. And the second part is that I want them to be, I want to, our beautiful ceremonies like Namkaran, Dastar,
Anji.
Charanagan. I want to write about them, for them to actually see themselves in that book and then want it, long for it. Like that little boy in Daddy's Turban, he's sitting on the bed looking at his father tying his dastar, right? All he wants to do is wear one like his father, which is so typical. All little boys want to be, guess what, like their dad. So for the child to see themselves, so my second set was that enough books so the children see themselves in it. Because if you don't see yourself in literature, then you're invisible.
Yeah.
And I don't want my children to be invisible. I want them to be very visible. So that was that part. Saki Time with Naniji actually began because Barusab asked me, they said they wanted to do animation videos on Journey with the Gurus. And I said, no, Journey with the Gurus cannot be turned into to animation because it's the voice of the Guru, right? They're words of the Guru. I said, no, I cannot let you do that. What I can do is I'll write you another set and you take a look of if that will work. So I wrote Journey with the Guru, Saki Time with Nanuji with that in mind, for it to be converted into that it could be, because I don't want Guru to be on screen. And I don't want to put words in Guru's mouth. So it's told through the voice of the Nani telling the story.
Right.
And so I did it in 2 languages, English and Punjabi. Unfortunately, the project didn't work out for whatever reason. But I had now these stories. And I didn't know you back then, Ranveer. But let me tell you something. I went through the ringer to get that book published. I had 3 publishers in India. And the first publisher said, we'd love to publish it, but we don't want to publish it in Punjabi. We want to do it in English and Hindi. I said, that can be second, but my first thing, it needs to be in Punjabi, right?
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind. And he said that, I'll have a very small readership. I said, that's fine. He said, okay, so we'll do that. And then he said, I have another request. And he said, I want you to remove the Janehu Saki. And I said, why? Right? And he said, it won't fit in. And I just don't want to do that. And I said, the deal is off.
Right. Yeah.
Second publisher said to me, we'll publish it, but we want the Janehu Saki and the Arti Saki to be taken out.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, no. And the third publisher said, we'll print it. But he was a very small, it was to get the book out. And I did it.
Yeah.
But this is, the barriers you face if you go into mainstream publishing, where the publishers tell you what you can write and what words you want to change. And I'm not going to do that, because this is not, I don't need this for my glory. I need this for the children. But can you imagine how sensitive that story of the Janehu is and Arti is to the broader Indian community?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it shouldn't surprise you, but it is still slightly surprising that they had the audacity to say to you, take those out. These are stories of the Gurus. How can you do that, right?
Well, they told me that and the first publisher said to me, he says, are you sure? Because you don't know what you're giving up.
Right.
He's the largest publisher.
Right.
He has
Right.
bookstores all over.
Yeah.
There are coffee shops. And he said, this book is a seller, is a winner.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but you don't know what I will be giving up for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
I'll never be able to look myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
I think my head would have fallen in shame.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that was shame, that would have been that
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
that I bowed to what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was I getting?
Sure.
Money?
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
money, more fame? It
Yeah.
means nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not, I mean, there's no equivalency.
Yeah.
But this is what, so I'm so grateful that you have taken on this venture where people like me have a place
Mm-hmm.
to come to, where we feel, well, I feel, actually, I can't speak for others, that our work, what we write, we will not be asked to change based on our faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the other things, yes, but not to take out something because it's not palatable.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
That's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of the main reasons why we actually started Khalis House, was to have this platform, because at the time I was finishing up the manuscript for Batra Mehma, the first manuscript, and I had approached a couple of publishers as well. And because of the narrative is so unapologetically Sikh and it's very empowering, and it centers Gurmat, and it centers our story, there was too many corners that they thought that need to be cut. So yeah, it was kind of just born from that. So yeah, I and since then, many people have said the same thing, that we now have this platform where we don't have to think twice. We can put forward a manuscript. And when you reached out, for me, I knew instantly that this was something that I just had to take forward, because my children, like I said, they've grown up reading your books. We have all 3 volumes. And I can see, not just from the point of view of having a nice, nice looking book, but it's the way in which the stories have been retold, as you say, right? And with the illustrations to supplement that, it's for me, it was a must, and it was a no-brainer, taking this on. So thank you, in fact, for reaching out and publishing with Khalis House.
Yeah, you had talked about, what am I working on in forthcoming books? Well, this is the 40th anniversary of 1984. And I have a grandson. He's about a year old, and year and a half old. And I thought to myself, when he turns 4, 5, what am I going to tell him about 84? So I wrote a children's book, The Brave Nightingale and the Golden Temple. It's a very gentle book, introducing the children through the story, through the voice of the nightingale and through the animals, what it was going to, what it is,
Right.
what happened, but in a very, very gentle way, because you don't want to overpower them. But you need a book to be, we as Sikh parents need a book to be able to introduce it to the child in a very gentle way. And it's a story of compassion, courage, and everything of that. And I'm grateful to you that when I sent you the manuscript, that you said, yes, we will take it on. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll probably be at more light towards the end of the year. And then the thought came, well, when he comes of age, who knows whether I'm here or not? And when he becomes a teenager. So then I wrote one, Resilient Fruits, a Sikh family's journey. And that one is through the partition and through 1984.
Okay.
And that'll probably be sometime in June, that'll come out. So it's the events, what happened with us, it's the community, what I feel that, it's just building a library for the children.
Yeah. This is why writing is so powerful, because I think different people will connect with history and events from the past in different ways. And with writing, you have so many different mediums. It's not everyone will pick up a history book. So having a poetry book or even a novel, where it allows them to connect with that history, because we know the history happened, and as you said, that we want them to connect with that, and kind of know their history. But this is why writing books, I think, especially on the topic of 84, is hugely important, because from my experience, we often speak quite highly of the 18th century, and we remember it fondly because of the way in which the Sikhs resisted, and that spirit of Chardi Kala. Most Gurukars around the world will honour that. But when it comes to kind of the recent episodes, we kind of tend to shy away from it. There could be a number of reasons for that, but I think that's where writing really can take on that role, because as I said, people will connect with it in different ways. So it's great to hear that you're writing for the younger children and also for young adults as well. That's brilliant to hear. Kind of connected to this, I guess, is the question I had about, from your experience as a writer, do you feel that there is a disconnect between Sikh storytelling and even writing in the diaspora? So let's say particularly in the US, where you are, compared to how Sikh storytelling is done in, for example, Punjab, and I mean beyond just the language. Are there any kind of differences that you see that have perhaps been shaped by our experiences as Sikhs in the diaspora?
I think so if I look at the Sakhis, only at the Sakhis, the literature that comes up from Punjab on them is very preachy and very, very judgmental. It's black and white. There's no curiosity for the child to ask the question. It's very harsh.
Right.
It's a very clear divide line. You're either good or you're bad. There's nothing in between. You cannot weaver and maneuver and all that. And for the books that are coming out of the US right now, that in English, I would still call them, if I may, in their infancy stage.
Right.
Because that depth right now, because there's such a hunger to stock books for Sikh children, that maybe some of them are really not quite up to par.
Right.
In the sense of looking at the pedagogy of the children, the language and skills of that. So it's great they're there, don't get me wrong. So that maturity has to come in as yet.
Right.
But books from India, because their education model is different.
Right.
It's more so be quiet and this is what it is, and you're not supposed to think. While in the West, we want the children to think. We want them to ask the questions. So it's a different model. So therefore, that divide or that is very much there.
Yeah. Would you say that relates just to the books coming out of Punjab, or generally across the state of India? Would you have experience or knowledge of that? Is it specific to our community, is the question I'm asking.
I think it is specific to our community, because when I look at, because the literature of, if I can say, the broader Indian community, it's very different.
Right.
They have stories on the seasons, they have stories on just about everything, and it's exciting, and it's like you want to be entrenched in them.
Right.
It's exciting. But somehow the literature from Punjab, particularly Sikh literature, it's actually like it doesn't allow you to grow.
Right.
There's no joy in the sign. There's no joy for the child to ask, what are we celebrating? Can we even celebrate the season? Can we do a book on Barama for the kids and take them through that? And that journey of the spring. I mean, no, I know there are books in in Indian culture, literature that have the season. But we don't have that because we don't think it's important. It's not about the guru, therefore we don't need to talk about it. And if we're going to talk about it, it's got to be bang, bang, bang. No, children don't grow up that way. That's not going to get their mind thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather for them to connect with Vesak. What it meant in history, what is it? Then the guru came, and why did he choose that festival? And, it's that birth within you, the Amrit within you. Everything is outside Vesak. And you then have a For a child, look at it from a child's perspective. They will connect Vesak then with blooming, with nature, and it's easier then to connect with the Vaisakhi of 1699,
Sure.
the the Amrit, because that is that nectar that goes inside you, and that is how you bloom and blossom. I mean, it's
Yeah,
all there.
absolutely.
Don't
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
it that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's a
So,
shame because we've had, we touched upon some of the biggest, writers in our history with Professor Pooran Singh and Bhai Veer Singh. And I know there obviously have been others since then, but we have such great examples, such great role models. But I feel the same way as you. I do feel there is a bit of a lack, and I think a lot of the even now, even with the children's books that are coming out, I think sometimes that creativity that's missing to, like you said, to get the kids asking more questions or get them thinking a bit more. It's very much this is how it is, and I think sometimes with my kids it gets very boring because they don't want to be preached to. I think this is where I'm coming to. So yeah, no, there's definitely room for improvement and work to be done there. Um, as Sikhs, we know how outspoken the Guru is about discrimination and oppression. We know from Sikh teachings and from Sikh history that equality and equity are of paramount importance. And clearly there is a Sikh influence in all of your work that you do. Are there any other non-Sikh sources of inspiration for you that you'd like to share with us?
Ranbir, ਜਦੋਂ ਮੱਥਾ ਗਿਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ, when your head falls and you submit, and you don't submit, and the submission takes place, there's no inspiration greater than Guru's.
Mhm.
There's nothing greater than Guru for me. So no, there is nothing else that maybe inspire me. Inspiration is a very, it's a loaded word. No,
Sure.
it is Sikh thought, it is Shabad Guru, which actually what I want for myself is to be embedded within, so that everything that flows out of me is from that
Mhm.
thing. So no, I don't, there's nothing else. It is really the Shabad Guru and the Sakhis of the Guru.
Mhm.
That is that is all for me.
I mean, our history is so rich that in itself is sufficient. That we have that inspiration in abundance. So that's beautiful to hear as well. A little bit about yourself in terms of what you like to read. So maybe your favorite book, either in English or Punjabi. I know you've already spoken about Professor Pooran Singh. What do you kind of find yourself going back to time and time again in terms of books?
Ranveer, what do you think? I only read Pooran Singh and
Okay.
Bhai.
Okay.
You see, and there's a reason, because you don't, when these two men, these two beings, these two entities have become your mentors, you want to be like your mentor.
Sure. Sure.
So why would you want another thought to come in? Yes, I'll pick up a book because someone said it's a bestseller, read it, and I'll read it, and that's fine. But I don't want to emulate that style. I don't want that thinking to influence the thinking the way Professor Pooran Singh and the way Petaji, I call Bhai Singh Ji now Petaji, because that relationship has evolved. It is how they present Sikhi, right? And through that, I actually don't want anyone to, if I may use the word, taint that thinking of
Right.
mine.
Right.
So no, I only read them,
Okay.
at any point in time, and I'm actually just in awe of them even today. It's if I haven't read for a while because I'm working on something, I think it was last month, and I felt I hadn't read Pitaji for a while, and I said I'm going to take this book with me to bed, and I'm going to read.
Right.
And I'm reading the poems of him, and I just like bawling. You're literally
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, hun
yeah.
aamil kal gaya वालिया, right?
Hanji, hanji.
And I'm just like, I gotta translate this. But pehle main, I have to be
Yeah,
calm and say,
sure, sure.
so that's how it all flows.
Yeah,
It has to be when it just moves you to such a great length that you want to bring it out for the world.
yeah.
And
I
it'll
think it's
never be as uh, as rich and as moving as the original, and I know that, but at least
exactly.
something.
Sure, sure, yeah. I was going to say, I think it's testament to the Guru and in terms of Sikhi generally that, especially those two individuals, when we look at the socio-political environment within which they were around, we know that Punjab had been annexed. There was a lot of infiltration taking place. There was the physical reshaping of Punjab, a lot of attacks on Sikh psyche. But for them to have withstood that and produce the works that they did is remarkable. And again, we often go back to writers like the pre-colonial writers, like the Ratan Singh Pangus, and rightly so. But I think by Veer Singh and Professor Pur Singh, those two in particular, and other writers of the Singh Sabha era as well, we sometimes miss the fact of what they were up against, and all of that was happening. When you read, especially their works in Punjabi, in Gurmukhi, it almost feels as though they were unaffected by all of that. That they were operating on a different plane because they had that connection directly with the Guru. Is very clear. So for me, that is such a huge inspiration because often especially when I speak with friends and my kind of circle, the world we live in, it can get you down sometimes because things are difficult and just the state of affairs within the Panth. But I always look to those two as shining examples of how when you have that Vishwas and that Sharda in the Guru, that anything is possible. And just hearing you speak about it as well and kind of the effect it's had on you, it's kind of reassured me of that as well. That more effort is needed from ourselves to build that stronger connection with the Guru. And maybe that's the reason why perhaps we're not seeing that many more books being produced because perhaps we're being swayed by the ways of the world.
We are being swayed by the waves of the world because we want to produce books which are bestsellers.
Yeah,
So we shortchange
right.
and we make the books palatable for the broader audience, which is great.
Hmm.
But in the meantime, we do miss out on a lot for our own self, and that's fine. And that's a decision which every author makes. Who's their audience, right? So I'm very clear who my audience is,
Right.
and I'm not, it's so crystal clear. I have no desire. I'm writing for my children. I'm writing for my community. If the other communities read it, great. But if they don't,
Sure.
it's okay. My audience is this. But you mentioned Professor Puran saying and what Pilaji and he were going through at that time. I had always thought of Professor Puran saying, not thought, I'd only read his Sikhi, his Spirit of the Sikhs and his poetry and everything.
Mhm.
And then when I came across his letter to Sir John Simon,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I just like fell in love with him all over again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that letter was so brilliant. The way he answered the British
Yeah.
in their language, in the word choices, using their authors and their so-called people they revere to explain what was happening. I
Yeah.
thought, I still do think that is the most beautiful piece of how to reply
Mhm.
in such a difficult situation.
Yeah.
The intellectual capital that was in that letter
Mhm.
shined.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there's no, if I can say, shortage of
Mhm.
intellectual capital. It's knowing
Right.
how to use it.
Right.
And the wit and the sharpness is which I found in that letter was brilliant.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it showed a different side to him. I think because a lot of
Yes.
what he said, in terms of his critique of what was to come, a lot of it came true. It was almost prophetic in many ways. So yeah, it's remarkable.
This is what I mean. These two individuals, not just wrote about Sikhi and Gurmat, they were very much aware of the world. They were dealing with that. And they took their stance in their own way. How they wrote, whether they wrote it through prose, wrote it through the, Khalsa Samachar, wrote it through prose to uplift the women. It doesn't matter. I mean, but they were very much aware of what was happening. They were not sitting on a mountaintop and just pontificating and writing these books. Very much part of the world, right? And seeing what was needed and then doing that. So for me, that seeing what my children need, books to inspire them, books which they are, want to be able to share is where I fit in. I hope to continue doing that.
Sure. Yeah.
Just going back to you spoke earlier about 1984 and the book that you're writing for that. Given the themes that you touch upon, how do you feel that the Sikh and the Punjabi community, specifically out here in the diaspora, how do you think that they will, or how do you hope for them to connect with your work, given the fact that they're aware of obviously what's happened in '84 and perhaps also the ongoing oppression that takes place? What would you like them to take from your work?
From my broader work, or the books which I'm writing on '84?
Yes, specifically on '84.
So if you had asked me this question, Ranveer, 5-10 years ago, I would have told you they would not buy that book. They would not want that book in their homes. It's a subject where many are uncomfortable about talking to their kids because they don't know how to, right?
Right.
However, now I think there's a shift.
Okay.
And it's going to be tough. I mean, I've already heard from a couple of my friends who are, in Gurdwara committees say, "Oh, Inni, if you're going to mention, Pendrawala in the book, we will not be able to bring it into our Gurdwara."
Wow, it's so sad.
No book sales. And I just said, it's okay. Right? It's okay. But that doesn't mean I'm going to change.
Right.
So there is that very much there. But the story still needs to be told.
Of course, yeah.
But I'm not one for, so Ranveer, Professor Puran Singh was not published in India.
Right.
His first books published were in England.
Oh, wow, okay.
He came, yes, he was not published in India. His books were brought back by, I think, Professor Randhawa, who saw his books and said, "Who is this?" And then they started publishing. So one doesn't need to be worried about sales. Yes, I know commercially and everything. One actually needs to tell the story.
Yeah.
And since when have we been, as a people, worried about ठीक होएगा, the fruit? You sow the seed. We're not worried about the fruit. That's not your job. It's a kirpa. Guru does that. You have to sow the seed. That's yours and my responsibility.
Right.
Whoever takes it, whoever eats it, whoever imbibes it, and whatever it is, not up to us.
Okay.
That is their journey. So I don't have that, what I'm saying, that attachment, that when the book leaves me, it leaves me. Right. It's out in the world. It belongs to the world. It no longer belongs to me.
Right.
So therefore, whether anybody likes it or dislikes it, or whether it sells or it doesn't worry me, because my job is to put the seed.
Right.
How many people are affected so deeply by Professor Puran Singh's writing and Bhai Veer Singh's writing, right? The ones who are, no. but for a whole
Right.
lot of people, they don't care. And that's fine too,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
not their journey, right?
Right. Okay. Okay.
So we just have to, I mean, for me, it is, I just have to do what I believe that I need to do and
Right.
not worry about the consequences of whether it will sell, whether it will, what will people say. I know people, I know authors who don't want to write about 84, who write children's book. No, I know an
Right.
author who has written one book but will not publish it
Right.
because they don't want to be associated with
Sure.
84. And for me, it's like, it's not, it's okay.
Yeah.
But
That must be
it's a
quite.
tough subject. It's a tough subject
Yeah.
to tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that I mean, just listen to your kind of your answer there and the approach that you take. It must be quite liberating to not feel that to feel concerned about how it would be received, because for you, from your perspective, you're telling the story because you feel it needs to be told, no matter which medium you express that in. So you're not really concerned about how the reader is going to take it. And does that work both ways, in the sense that those who are perhaps going to be critical of your work, they'll be so, but also those who connect, or are you of the opinion that that is your driving force, that you want this story to inspire the next generation, and for them to feel proud of our history, rather than what else, what the mainstream says about 84 and related topics.
And that's why, Ranveer, I work very closely with the children, right?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
these two books, the
Yeah.
84 books, they've been vetted by the children,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I'm very clear on my audience. It's my children that have to like it.
Yeah.
And my children that need to connect with it. It needs to make sense to them. Whether it makes sense to their parents is a different thing. Or
Sure.
if it makes sense to, the other authors or the people who, do book reviews, I'm not interested. I'm only interested in this group. Does it make sense to them? That's it. So that makes it, when when you have the clarity who your audience is and you're connected with them and you're writing only for them, it is liberating.
Yeah.
But it's also a huge responsibility, and it's like a humbling experience.
Right.
For
Right.
the sick, the resilient roots. The feedback what I got was we don't connect with the youngster's voice, with Zoraba's voice.
Right.
Go back to the drawing board
Okay.
and
Okay.
change that voice to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
it palatable. So the effort is there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The criticism or the feedback is at that stage, and I'm getting it
Right.
from my audience who
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
writing for. So I'm comfortable, very comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really refreshing to hear, actually. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, well,
Um.
it's the truth.
Yeah.
I guess kind of linked to this is maybe the final question that I have for you before we maybe wrap up today's episode is what advice would you give to aspiring writers who have this kind of pull towards Sikhi or Punjab or preservation in terms of furthering that Sikh experience? What would be your top advice that you'd give to them at this stage? So this is somebody who hasn't published before. They have an idea, perhaps. Maybe there's a bit of self-doubt or imposter syndrome is often kind of thrown about. What advice would you give them?
First of all, I don't give advice because I'm in no position to give advice. The question is for the writer to ask themselves, why are you writing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? From what place are you writing?
Mm-hmm.
Are you writing for a place of fame?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you writing really from a place of authenticity? That what is it that you would like to want for this book?
Right.
And who is your audience? Once they have that clarity, everything will flow. And don't emulate anyone's style, because you have to be original to what,
Mm-hmm.
we as writers, we all, not as writers, everyone has a language pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
The word choices and everything they use, the way they think. Use that. Don't borrow somebody
Right.
experience, because it'll be fake.
Mhm.
So for the authors, especially if you want to write about the Sikh experience or the Punjab experience, they must come it from that perspective, not try to say, well, the Jewish community or the Armenian community, or this happened and that, and let me bring that into my. No,
Right.
it can't be. It has to be your experience.
Sure. Yeah.
That authenticity must be from there. But that would be the only thing I would say. And self-doubt, I doubt myself all the time. I mean, that's just like, who wrote
Yeah.
this? Not me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's that clarity of why you want to do it, which is important, because that will be the driving force.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that will then compel you to be humble enough to ask the questions, to be able to go to your audience and receive the criticism before it is, to do that really amount, I mean, if I can call it, that's the chiseling work, which happens on the author, right?
Sure.
So are you prepared for that chiseling to take place?
Yeah.
Because it turns you,
Yeah.
particularly if you write, and why are you writing, if you're not going to be, if it's not going to be authentic.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think, yeah, being authentic, being true to yourself, and what that also does is it's very empowering as well, because you're very assured of your own writing, and of the stories that you want to tell and how you want to tell them. And then I think that also then follows through when you're having discourse about your work, because you know exactly what it is. Your grounding is very strong because you've always been true to yourself. You haven't relied upon others,
Right.
or been swayed by others' opinions. So
Right.
yeah, so I would echo those. So yeah, I mean, it's been great and fascinating talking with you. An absolute pleasure. I know we've had some back and forth with regards to the books coming out. So just a reminder, actually, for our listeners and our viewers, the new editions of Inni Kaurji's 3 volumes, Journey with the Gurus, is out on the 14th of April, and they're available to order from khalishouse.com. You've already mentioned that there is a 4th volume in the works as well, so hopefully we'll share news about that sooner to the time of it coming out. And there are a couple of other works you've mentioned, which again we'll mention in the description as well. So yeah, thank you very much for taking the time and joining me today. As I said, I've learned a huge amount, and I wish you all the best in your creative endeavors.
Thank you so much, Ranbir, and thank you once again for taking on the publishing work of Journey with the Gurus. If I may say one thing, I did offer this book this series to a couple of publishers before I came to you.
Yeah.
But there were too many restrictions. We'd love to do it, but we want to halve the illustrations. We want to take out the discussion points. We want to make it manageable so that the price point is, I mean, there was just so much, and I just said, no. You're the only person who said we'll take it as is. And that was really a sigh of relief and a breath of fresh air to come to a place and say, no, we just do it exactly the way it is done. So thank you for that.
It's okay, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.